Continuing our talk here with our guests, it's been fascinating. We're talking about post-lockdown. This is probably the only place, as I said in the first part, where we can be in the same room. It's quite bizarre, and I hope we don't get so complacent as last time. But I want to go back to you. I mean, you're at the hard end of this. Your life went on, post office co-op, but no. Now, did you get the support you expected? Did you hear the information you wanted and that sort of thing? Let's pick up on that.
I'm grateful that we got some support, because at the beginning there was none offered, and because we went a little bit over, they did give us a small grant. For a business like mine, it wasn't nearly enough, but I do understand that the taxpayers, including myself, they're the ones that are funding all this. It's it's going to take some time to get out of the debt that's built up, because there's rent, there's bills, there's staff payments, everything. So it's going to take some time to get back to normal.
Alf tweets things. Mr. Cannon, should I say? The Treasury Minister, he brought back the schemes, but they weren't the same schemes either, were they? There was less on offer. But
we went for the salary support scheme for our staff. And I did put my form in last week. There was something on there that previously they told us we had to put down what we were claiming and the actual hours worked, rather than the hours that we were claiming for, and it was so confusing.
A lot of paperwork.
I had to get my accountant to actually email them themselves, because I had no idea what I was doing. So she did all the forms for me and sent it in. And that's another bill that I've got to pay. I've got an accountant bill.
I keep hearing there's a lot of hoops to jump through.
Yeah, I don't understand why it was so different. And I've had a few small businesses, certainly self-employed, who cannot get the grant because their overheads are not, originally it was £500, they're not £250. They work from home, they work in their own homes and do all their books themselves. So it has been different this time. I'm totally with Sam, what she said. We've got to find our way out of this. The future, your children, my grandchildren.
But of course,
they're going to be paying for this for a long time.
And it's at least 12 million, I think. Alf said maybe more. It's going to for that hiccup on the screenings.
Yeah, and you think if a 13-day test would have come in,
we wouldn't have had to do this now.
But it's in the past, and we do have to move forward and make sure that.
The total cost of COVID so far has been quoted as being 200 million, hasn't it?
I'm not sure where that aim comes from. That's a big jump from this 15 that I But
I mean, going back to what Sam was saying there, I would definitely agree from the point of view of small companies, small businesses, independent traders, etc. My thoughts are the government haven't really been sensitive enough to the very different natures of lots of these businesses. And look, I mean, a lot of these guys work incredibly hard to provide food for the table, but also to provide jobs for other people. And actually, they're not accountants, they're not Philadelphia lawyers that can pick the bones out of complex documents, etc. Look, I mean, it might sound uncharitable, but it almost feels as if the government bring in schemes that they don't want to pay the money out to people because they're making it so difficult for people to claim it that people then fall through the cracks. And I would definitely see that the need to... The frustrating thing for me is that they had a dry run at this last year, and I would be asking the question, well, what have they been doing in the intervening period to actually tweak things to improve them? I mean, an example within my own industry, and I'm not going to name names of other retailers, but there was a system. No, there was a system put in place at the last lockdown whereby for the people who were on free school meals were given vouchers for a major island retailer to buy their school meals. Now, for certain members of the public, the nearest outlet of this retailer might be 2 bus journeys away.
I see where you're going on this. They picked a particular store, a group, a company, rather than saying anywhere.
And that's fine because it was rushed in last time, and they didn't have time to prepare for that, and it was implemented incredibly quickly. The difference being they've had 7 months to prepare for this lockdown, and they could have looked at that as part of the wash up of the last time. And
they were doing tabletop exercise. They kept telling us they have COVID, we're in this thing, and that's what I think it was people surprised me.
I think to be fair, I think Treasury have done a a great job.
Yeah.
They've been there. I think the Department for Enterprise, to not know what their small businesses are, what the implications are, whether people were paying their national insurance and that is their responsibility to look after the retail sectors of the island.
That's another thing with the national insurance.
That's where the issue, and they should have really, the people in there on the retail sector and business, they should have been making sure. We all knew, everybody kept saying, it will come back.
Yeah.
So it is disappointing that it's been not as smooth as it could have been.
It's another thing I heard with people not being able to claim. They gave everybody the option to pay your national insurance and things late, but then punished you for it. So I don't understand where that came from.
Sorry, explain.
Well, some people first lockdown weren't paying national insurance because they were taking dividends. Yeah. Then they allowed an extended period of time. Yeah. This time round, there's a lot of people start-up businesses. If you haven't paid your tax and NI, it's with 12 weeks
it had to be up to date.
Are we okay? Were you on that? Were you caught?
Yeah, no, I'm very lucky. That's one thing that I would never let lapse.
But it was quite legal to do what people were doing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Pay divvies out rather than to take.
I think part of the system as well was. I mean, I was speaking to a good friend of mine who's self-employed, and what he would do is pay his national insurance annually, effectively. Yeah. So he would wait until his tax return came through, and he would generally get a rebate as part of that tax return, and then use that to pay his national insurance. Now, people who did that were excluded from being able to claim these benefits, and it was said that you weren't supposed to pay your national insurance in that way. You were supposed to keep it more up to date. The issue is Treasury were allowing people to do that, but then refusing to pay people the benefit based on what they were allowing them to do. And for me, that's just plain wrong. They should, if they're allowing a system to happen where they're tolerating people paying their national insurance annually, then they shouldn't exclude those people from the benefits that are based on people paying their national insurance.
And that hit the self-employed.
It hit a lot of self-employed people. And I think the
Treasury are doing a review of NI. They are doing.
But they could have done this.
And they're going to report.
Is that the whole point? They could have done it between version 1 and 2.
They've had 7 months to look at the way these benefits were handled, and certainly my view is they could have learnt from last year and put a better system in place. There's a big piece of work around, to be honest, around educating those who run small businesses, self-employed, etc. Because I don't think there's enough done to equip them with the right level of knowledge and experience and skill set. You generally find people who set up a small business are very good at the particular skill set that the business requires, but maybe they don't have the actual business skills, the accountancy skills, etc., etc. And I'm not suggesting that everyone who runs a business should be fully skilled up in all of these financial skills, but there should be more available to them to learn an element of this, again, so that they can look after themselves.
Department for Enterprise, that's their responsibility. The micro business grants, all that, they do have experienced people, but it's difficult for people. So people go off on their own, set up their own business, and then they keep going, and then it's something like this impacts them, and it is down to that initial.
So you hope then at the moment that while we're in, not in lockdown, that they're looking at everything again in case it has to come back. Although, of course, with the vaccine, maybe never again.
You would hope so. I mean, one of the things I would say about retail and the private sector, we learn quickly. We don't tend to repeat the mistakes of the past, and I think there's an element where the culture and structure and hierarchy of the way government operates isn't conducive to learning quickly and isn't conducive to changing and pivoting when quickly. Now look, we've had a very, very good experience. I don't want to sound like I don't want to sound like I'm government bashing here, because I'm absolutely not. I do feel that the Manx government have done an amazing job of navigating us through the COVID crisis, but I do feel that there's a culture change is required to learn quicker. The world is changing so quickly. The pace of change is quicker than ever before in history, and I think we need to be equipped to be able to change and react and be proactive to meet the challenges of the future.
That's down to the calibre of people, isn't it, that you've got working in some of these top senior roles. And personally, I think a CEO in any of our government departments should only be on a 5-year limited term contract, and then we would be making sure we've got the best of the best dealing with
Not
it.
a job for life sort of
Not
scenario.
a job for life. To be fair, a lot of people do criticise the government unless you've been in it, and I've been in it a long time before I was elected. You don't understand it. It is a big engine to operate, and but I think it's down to the calibre of people and the training, and if there's, does anybody ever see in a civil servant not retain their job? There's always a reason, or they don't, and I think
Well, there'll be some sort of
issues with regards to getting the calibre right.
But won't there be a thing into this? At the end of it? There's bound to be a committee, and they'll look back on it, but no one's going to get sacked about it. No one's going to lose a job over it. Is that what you're saying, is it?
And that's, and that's where we need to make sure that government is agile enough to be agile, flexible, be able to move and respond quickly, as Andy says.
Well, let's just remember it was a 3-week lockdown that has worked. And we now look at Guernsey, who are following down the route. What has been interesting is watching the Guernsey press conferences and the different style. And I know people are going to go, I'm having a hobby horse here, but I suppose I am. It's the way they interact with their public is quite fascinating. I don't know if you've had a chance to see this. It's, as someone put on Twitter, it's like an adult conversation rather than adult to child, and the child are the press. Probably me.
There's a different tone of voice to the social media in particular, isn't there? And a different tone of voice to the instructional kind of piece that comes out.
That's down to professional skills prior to,
Howard has to read his script, and it's unfortunate that he hasn't that ability to talk to the audience, and you can say what you like, but reading is very hard for anybody to do, isn't it? To interact. If you're looking down at thing, I suggest they get an auto cue put in, but that didn't get down well.
It's down to your professional approach to it, and your knowledge of the subject matter in front of you should be able to not be completely reading from scripts all the time, and that. And but I'm glad they did the press conferences. I think they were the question and answer session that you talked about earlier with James Davis, I think was far more professional than we get from the normal public sessions.
They did. They seemed to be much more relaxed about talking there. And even when David Ashford was taking the press conference, and we had Dr. Allison, the two, it didn't feel. I don't know what.
MHKs weren't allowed into them. We weren't allowed to go to any of the press conferences in the last lockdown. And to me that would have been quite a good opportunity for them to get used to having people.
Do you get advanced knowledge of what he's going to say, though?
About 2 minutes before.
Yeah.
And I understand why that is, because the Chief Minister, they have had problems with some politicians. They like to leak information, don't they? So, and I do understand that, but we didn't, we didn't know about the lockdown. I knew the Villa Marina was open before we'd had any press, really. So, there you go. So.
A bit more positive as well, that it's only been the 3 weeks. And for your counterparts in the UK, you'd be still looking at horrendous things.
I've got a lot of friends, and I had salons in the UK before I moved here. My friends are really, really, really struggling. I feel so lucky to live on such an amazing island. For the Manx public have done a fabulous job. The government, I take my hat off to them. They've tried. They've done their best, and we've followed the rules, and we've done it really well. I mean, we're so lucky to have had 6 months living normal life. And don't get me wrong, I'm really missing my family. I've got no family over here other than my husband and children, but I'm not going to risk anybody's life or my business just to go and see my family. I can always video call them. But it's been great that we can just get back to work today.
So you think the lockdown should continue like it is? Keep the borders tight?
We've got to get a plan to get out of this, and I think now the vaccinations are rolling out. Not as fast as we'd all hoped, but I think they are catching up now.
Well, I think we've got that information that's now vital for the public to see and have confidence, because it wasn't there, was it?
It wasn't there.
And again, they could have had ages to have this put in place. I don't know.
They could have been part of the vaccination rollout. Should have been planning of to how we're going to inform the public of that. But to be fair to them, with this second lockdown, we've had a lot more interaction and briefings with the Chief Minister and the ministers than we had in the last one, and I think that's helped them, and it's also helped us. So.
I think my thoughts on the borders. So obviously the government have said there's a strategy of elimination of COVID from Manx shores. The reality is that if every single person on this island is vaccinated, we haven't eliminated COVID. It isn't clear that the vaccine you can potentially still catch COVID when you've had the vaccine. It just means you have much milder symptoms. It's also feared that it's potentially still transmissible when you've had the vaccine. So the reality is, if every single person has had the vaccine and you open the borders up, COVID will come back to the Isle of Man. It just means it won't cause carnage when it does come to the Isle of Man. So I think we need to work our way to a solution eventually whereby we decide what the criteria are by which we start unlocking the borders and start getting the economy going in that respect. But from a personal point of view, I think that strategy of the way we've controlled our borders in the way we have is a massive part of why we've been so successful with the virus. And you look at other jurisdictions such as New Zealand in particular, very, very similar strategy, and they've pretty much said that nothing much is going to change until 2022 on their borders. So
they've got air corridors off and on with Australia.
Yeah.
It depends on who's having a COVID outbreak. I mean, WA's shut down again.
But certainly the borders has been a massive weapon in keeping us safe from COVID. So I certainly wouldn't be keen on seeing any rapid or rash changes to that.
So asking MHK, what would you do? You know, you're in there.
I've the same view. The majority of people that contact me keep the borders closed. However, we are going to have to find a recovery out of this. I haven't seen a strategy for coming out of COVID and what the way forward for the government. I'd like to see that sooner rather than later. But the public generally are really pleased with what's happened. There's a lot of people do want to go and see families. Let's get majority.
What would you do? Well, I mean, would you have a game plan now, like saying subject to?
I would have a strategy now to take us right through to 2022, because if you haven't got a strategy and you know where you're going, if something changes today, what we do, and if you haven't got a strategy in place for all scenarios and a recovery plan,
okay.
Where can you be?
To finish this off, let's talk about the vaccine a bit more and these hubs and there's nothing in Ramsey sort, but I mean, I keep asking about that. What do you think? Do you think it all seems a bit, again, late organising it? I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but what do you think?
I feel, I've actually got a question tomorrow with regards to why didn't we order our first tray of Pfizer on the day we could, which was the 5th of December. We didn't. We ordered it on the 11th. Hopefully let's get an answer to that tomorrow.
I just thought we just got it.
I feel like perhaps there wasn't a plan in place. That's how it certainly came across, that there was no... We knew there was vaccines coming down the line, but I think people were expecting them a lot later than they came quite quick in the end, didn't they? To be spending all that money on in the airport hub with like permanent structures when you're seeing people going into churches in the UK with screens. We've got thousands of office screens on the Isle of Man. We could have done this.
But as I said, I was in Guernsey in they must be so fair about me saying this at the press conferences, but it was in August and they'd built it in their airport at that stage. They were being proactive about the whole thing. What do you think about the whole thing, vaccines and the way?
So?
I don't really know where we're going with it, because it's just one of those things, isn't it? We've all got to have it, but there's so many questions of when are we getting it, where's it coming from? You know, they're saying that we're getting all these from the UK, but then the UK are struggling now as well. So where does that leave us?
Well, technically, eventually, it's 3 times as much as they need in the UK if it all comes on stream. So we'll be in the same scenario, I suppose, because we get this percentage of the UK.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it is the latest I heard was we're still being told we're on track to have everyone who wants to be vaccinated by the end of September. So coming back to what Julie said, then what? That's my question. So once we get to the end of September, what happens next?
Election.
Exactly. Yeah, that's coincidental, isn't it?
It's going to be, isn't it?
Getting in the way.
But there's a bit there that says that if I knew that something as momentous as having the entire population vaccinated by the end of September was going to happen by that day, I would then have some sort of plan in place for what was going to happen from the 1st of October, for instance, and have a roadmap for what the future looks like with a fully vaccinated Isle of Man. I mean, obviously, there's other elements to that in terms of what our approach would be to people coming to the Isle of Man from elsewhere who haven't been vaccinated, because albeit they, you could argue they wouldn't put a pressure on our health service by infecting our local population and causing them to overwhelm the NHS, they could themselves end up in our hospitals and cause issues in that way.
That's my point with exemptions.
Yeah.
Right.
We don't, how many exemptions people are here, and we don't know, they could overwhelm our health service in another way. So.
Yeah.
But to finish off, I mean, it looks like we're on the back of this now. I mean, that's the thing. The chance of another lockdown, hopefully, should be slim, but it is possible. I mean, especially with this variance out there. But overall, do you think this is it? You think we're on the home stretch?
Well, in retail, we're ready for more lockdowns because it's that adage: hope for the best, but plan for the worst. So I've already got my stores sort of primed to make sure they've got everything ready.
New rolls.
We go back. well,
No, it's stupid.
I mean, stock wise, that's something we can't sort of build a huge stock holding. We're not equipped to be able to do that, and a lot of what we sell is fresh produce as well. But certainly from the point of view of the speed of implementation of things like social distancing and face coverings and getting the signage up and controls in place, we're ready to go again. If we lock down again tomorrow, we'd be ready to open tomorrow morning for in that circumstance. And we're already looking at the learnings from the latest lockdown in terms of how we would do it better if we had to do it again, etc. I would agree with what you said, that it does feel like that we're progressing towards a slightly different world where COVID won't be quite the aggressor that it has been in the past. But we're also heading for certainly across the water on the adjacent island, heading into the biggest recession that they've ever known in their history. And who knows what the future holds for us and for our future generations, etc. We can only hope that the Isle of Man does a better job of weathering the storms ahead.
Well, there are some pluses out of this. I'm thinking of your lot, because people have been going Amazon mad, haven't they? I mean, so the parcel delivery has been going to the roof.
It's certainly been a busy time, but of course we were impacted by Royal Mail and the UK situation, so there has been delays from Royal Mail. And everybody thinks it's Salomon Post's fault, but no, it's Royal Mail have really struggled with.
Don't get away with a good story, you know.
Yeah.
So what I'll say to the Manx public is give the Isle of Man Post Office a break and stop shopping with Amazon, please.
I know
the high streets are open again, and we've got some fantastic
and some sad news there about losing some more retail shops.
We've got some fantastic independent retailers in Manx retailers in Ramsey. I mean, Ramsey's got a fantastic high street. We've got plenty of independent.
What about construction? You're building a place out in Crosby, and I'm not sure there was Manx construction workers on that. Come on.
We'll come back on that one another time.
well, just to correct what Julie said there, we're actually renting a unit at Crosby that was built by a third party landlord. And we'll be providing jobs for quite a lot of Manx people and servicing a lot of people in the Moran parish with a state of the art.
There's a whole other debate coming up from this one.
Retail, and Andy's touched on a point there with regards to Isle of Man Post Office. People's habits are changing. And, I think it was in June last year, you'd done an article about cash in the retail after following the last lockdown, and it's decreasing out there. But of course, the Isle of Man, we do need a solution for cash.
The industry's definitely changing, but I'll definitely say the likes of what will help people like Sam and other independent businesses is the Manx public using the services that are offered locally, and I think the Manx public did a fantastic job of that. There was a great feel good factor, I think, last summer after the lockdown ended, and people really embraced local businesses and shopping locally and using local services. And look, if there's an inability to get off the island to have holidays, it's that whole piece about staycations, but also treating and pampering yourself, visiting the local shops, treating it as an experience, eating out locally, etc. That's what will, all these businesses have been closed down. That's what will help us bounce back, and that's what will keep that local economy going. And then the roadmap towards how and when we start unlocking the borders to a greater degree will sort out the more international economy.
Okay, not do much foreign exchange, I'm guessing, in a minute then.
No, that's certainly to get a bit of a slump.
But you will see everything bounced back, I assume.
Yeah,
you
we
must have
do.
massive pent-up demand, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pain for us because we're going to be working solid, but we are very lucky. You can't order, an nail service online, so they do come back. We had people messaging us, when can we book in, because we closed our books completely. We deleted every single appointment that was booked in advance, and we didn't let anyone book in until we know 100% we was back to work. Well, it's never 100% if that one case came back, but we opened our books on Thursday, and by Friday our first week was full, second week was getting full, and then it'll be a steady, every few weeks they come back.
And some people use lockdown to enhance their businesses, do the sprucing up or do the changes. Have you done anything like that?
I have actually. We wanted to help our customers, so we put some kits together so they could take their nails off at home. We did a video tutorial on our Facebook page, and we also gave them a little leaflet telling them exactly what they needed. But not only that, we use a lot of crystals in the salon. And I found a pair of trainers and I decided to just put loads of crystals on these trainers, post them on Facebook, and everybody's like, I want some. So I ordered about 20 pairs of trainers, and I've been painting them, I've been crystalling them.
A new business.
It didn't earn me any money really, but it kept me busy.
Wow. Well, listen, thank you all for joining us here today, and let's hope we're not discussing the next lockdown in any time soon. Pretty positive feels, just yes and no's here?
I think so. I think people are now ready to get and spraying the suns up, daffodils, snowdrops. Oh. I do think, but I'd like to see this strategy of a way out and what's going to happen with the borders and testing possibly at the ports. Port security too, though.
I mean, it's basically 1st of February, Happy New Year Part 2. Basically, Happy New Year Part 1 didn't work too well, so let's start our year here. But no, very positive from the retail sector. The vast majority of stores are opening today as normal, without any control measures in place. I suppose the only message I would sort of end with is not everyone will be quite as comfortable to return to normality quite as quick as each other, and I'd ask people to be kind to each other. If there's people who want to wear masks, then that's fine.
But I was in town this morning, and it's like nothing had happened. The coffee shops, because I took mine in case, as I said earlier.
The majority haven't. No. But I mean, one of the lessons we've learned, and we touched on this earlier, but the seasonal flu and things like norovirus and sickness and vomiting has been almost non-existent this winter compared to previous winters, and there's got to be a lot in that around the enhanced hygiene methods everyone's been adopting and the social distancing, etc. So there's a piece around all protecting ourselves by still looking after our hand hygiene, catching our coughs and sneezes, and not invading people's personal space.
You sound like a bit of a politician. I need to ask you this because it's coming up constantly. Are you standing?
I'm just a Manxman who cares about.
No. I asked you a question. Don't be political now yet. Are you standing?
Well, right this second, I'm sitting down, Paul, and that's about as much as you'll get out of me. Oh. Look, I mean, at the moment, I'm not considering that. I just care about the Isle of Man, and I want my homeland to do well. I think I'm doing a pretty good job of that at the moment through the job that I'm already doing, and I absolutely love to bits my secondary employment as a firefighter. So this isn't a watch this space, I'm afraid, Paul. Okay. I'm happy doing what I'm doing for now.
It wasn't a no, was it? No. Finally, your views.
Yeah, I think this morning getting up and taking the kids to school was all back to normal. Hopefully we can keep it contained and not have this again. But like we've said, I think the Manx public do want an outlook what's going to happen next. So I do think they need to put something in place to say, this is what we propose. It might not happen, it can change, but this is what our future may look like.
Wow. And on that note, I think we've done pretty well. We've done quite a long section too. Hopefully you enjoyed it at home. Got the weekend debate back on hopefully Saturday, subject to getting the panel, and we can all sit here. Thanks indeed for joining us. And if you've got any comments, please let us know. If you've got suggestions for future programmes as well. Thank you very much.
Please subscribe to the Isle of Man TV archive channel. Thank you.